What's up guys, it's Naf here. So it's been a while since I've uploaded an Ironman progress video that didn't involve clue scrolls, dating back to when I maxed my Ironman account on the 12th of February. And although most of my time since then has been spent doing clue scrolls, I have still managed to do a few other things, mainly being bosses with lockouts or things that are AFK I was doing when I wanted some downtime. Also, I do want to mention I was working on a lot of these things at the same time and over a long period of time, in particular Beastmaster Der Tag and Ratsee. So even though I'll talk about one of them before the other, keep in mind I was progressing on these things simultaneously, although obviously I will try to be as clear as possible about the rough timeline in which these things were going on. So the first thing I got stuck into after maxing was divination on the Ark. Now there was two reasons for this. One, I wanted a lot of divine charges for the future. I did max in the second week of February and I knew the clue scroll update was coming at the end of the month, so the plan was to get most of my clue scrolls through combat and get a bunch of invention experience as well. And my reason for using the Ark as opposed to incandescent energy was because I was working on other videos at the same time and it was in fact amazingly AFK. Literally only needing to click every minute or two, and also giving pretty decent experience at the same time, usually giving around 60 to 70k divination experience per hour. Now at the time I didn't realize how little those energies were converting into divine charges, as by the time I reached 107 divination from 99, I was out of divine charges and decided it was time to convert all of these energies, which in total gave me 884 divine charges, which ended up being more than enough for all the combat I did collecting clue scrolls. Funnily enough, I ended up pickpocketing for most of my clue scrolls being the elite clues, and killing hellhounds for hard clues was extremely efficient, so I didn't actually end up doing much combat at all and ended at around 125 invention. Next, I want to talk about Beastmaster Der Tag. So this is a boss I first killed in late November last year, and since then I've tried to kill somewhat consistently. Now that hasn't worked out perfectly. In the process of maxing throughout January, I did take a break from BM entirely, and I do only kill this boss virtually with the same group of people, meaning there are the odd occasion when too many people aren't available and we tend to skip the boss altogether. But nevertheless, since November of last year, I have gotten a total of 45 Beastmaster kills, and in that time I have gotten some unique drops, including 2 ability codexes, about 48,000 techie, which is the unique currency he drops, and also a pair of Razorback gauntlets, which are actually very rare from this boss, and nowhere near as exciting as the pet drops, but I didn't actually manage to have a pair of these gloves at all prior to this, so it was actually kind of nice. So until now, I haven't really worried about getting any of the abilities outside of Corruption Shot, since I've always been using ranged for pretty much everything for quite a while, since my Noxious Longbow has been my best weapon since late last year. But that will change today, considering I have enough techie and also ability codexes to purchase every ability, which does also mean I don't really actually have anything to buy in the future with my techie. Obviously there are the armor pieces, but they are in fact inferior to the armor that actually drops from BM, so I don't really see myself using it. But then again, I haven't looked into it thoroughly enough to judge whether this armor may actually be worth using, but we'll have to see. Overall, BM so far has been a relatively fun boss. Once you actually manage to get your 10 people ready to go, the boss is a pretty quick and easy kill. I think my biggest disliking with BM is the 1 kill in every 2-day system. It really does mean you're looking at killing this boss for potentially years before you can have a chance at owning every piece of unique armor he drops. In saying that though, I'm yet to actually get into killing Yakamaru, which would mean I could get this gear faster, but it does seem the drop rates are pretty similar regardless, so I don't plan on actually getting this armor as it seems pretty far out of reach, and now that I do have all the Mazcav abilities, I'm pretty much just killing BM in the future for the sake of it. The next thing I've spent significant time on over the past month or so is Ratsee. So similar to BM, I did actually begin killing this boss late last year, but in September. Now I did manage to consistently farm this boss until I got a Noxious Longbow at 291 Ratsee kill count in December. Following this, I did unfortunately slack off with Ratsee, pretty much ignoring the boss entirely until last month. And what really motivated me to get back into this boss was getting an ice dye from my 500 elite clue video. Now, many of you may not know, it was actually quite a long time ago now, I did also manage to get a Barrows dye last year, when completing hard clues when I was trying to make myself a Luck of the Dwarves ring. so considering I now had 2 dies in my bank on my Ironman, it felt extremely wasteful to just have them sitting around. So that really spurred me to get back into killing this boss in the hopes of finishing off a Noxious Scythe and also a Noxious Staff. So by early June, I had managed to get multiple spider leg pieces, the spider eye and also spider fang by 389 kill count, and considering it was the easiest path available for what I needed, I decided it was time to push for the final spider leg pieces I needed by using all the pheromones I had accumulated. So at this point I had a total of 10, and I did only need the spider middle and spider bottom leg pieces, which was perfect since my least favorite path was top anyway. So things were looking good. I did manage to get the spider middle leg piece on kill 390. That's right, I did get it on my first kill after deciding it was time to really push this to get this done. So I was extremely happy and confident about getting this last piece, still with 10 pheromones remaining. But oh was I wrong. So over the course of the next few days, I did use all of my pheromones during the current path and also the next path, which was top and bottom, which for those who don't know is the Minion and Darkness path, which wasn't ideal, but it still gave me access to the Darkness path to get the final piece I needed. But even then, I still couldn't manage to get it, and this trend actually continued over the next 3 weeks. And what actually made it somewhat more frustrating was I was technically getting somewhat lucky, getting a decent amount of spider hilts, onyxes, and Serenic scales, but at this point all I wanted was that final leg piece so I could move on from this boss. So because I was really trying to get this last drop, I was doing more than my usual kills, up to the 140% in rage or so, and instead trying to push to around 240% in rage each day. Now I know to some people that still isn't very hard, but to me it was, and the deaths I did have were often just in phase 4, where I couldn't manage to keep on top of clicking everything and died as a result. So I finally decided to implement some actual keybinds onto my action bar. I was always aware keybinds would make things easier, as I do play other games that use them, so it's something I'm not completely foreign to, but doing so on Runescape always felt weird to me, as I have been playing this game for a very long time before the EOC was actually implemented, so clicking in Runescape just always felt natural to me. But reluctantly, I did set up some basic keybinds. Now I'm not ready to start keybinding every single ability, but I did manage to set up keybinds for my protection prayers, food, and potions, which in itself made a massive difference. And after a little over 3 weeks, and a total of 258 Ratsee kills, after getting that middle piece, I did get the final bottom leg piece I was after. So that left me at 647 total Ratsee KC by the time I got that final leg piece, which was extremely disappointing considering this was the only thing I actually wanted to get done before making this video. But nonetheless, I was still happy that not only could I use up my dies, with the Barrow one sitting in my bank since November of last year, but it also meant I could start using magic and melee again, since I actually had equally matched weapons to my Noxious longbow. Now after quite some consideration, I decided to use the Barrow's die on the Noxious Staff, as it's something I've always liked the look of, and I'd never actually seen an ice dyed anything, but I had heard the scythe looked decent, so I thought why not. Now I had gotten the flame enchant item from a master clue scroll, I didn't realize it was something for the cosmetics store, and I was going to use it on the bow, but oh well, nothing for the bow, but considering how much I've used that thing anyway, I'll probably try use magic and melee a lot more in the future regardless. So there we go. Now I have to be completely honest, I am a little disappointed with the ice die. I actually like the oozing effect that the Noxious weapons have, so to have that entirely replaced with a snowflakey kind of effect to me is a little bit lame, but regardless, I'm still happy with my decision of what I dyed, and generally just really happy that I'm finally done with that boss. Another thing I also wanted to do was make my first set of Serenic armor. I had managed 29 onyxes and 35 or so Serenic scales just in the time I had spent trying to farm that bottom spider leg piece, so I did have a lot more Serenic than I realized, and I thought why not. So I'm not actually going to equip this armor yet. I wanted to augment the armor and potentially upgrade it first, although I don't really have an idea about how rare that Serenic upgrade kit is, so for the moment I'm not too sure. Now, since I was only going to 240% in rage per day, and there were times at Ratsee where Darkness Path wasn't even available, so that meant there were times I was completely unable to push that goal. So to fill in that time, I decided to use up my divine charges I had made months ago before getting into those clue scroll videos. Now, the efficient part of me thought about doing something like Ascension Creatures to be able to farm up those keys so I could eventually do an Ascension boss video where I progress on getting those tier 90 crossbows, but instead I took the lazier option and killed Hellhounds, for no better reason that they were extremely AFK and easy to get to and also to bank. So the plan was to try get 200 mil invention experience with as much combat experience as possible along the way, although I hadn't done any planning at all, so I really had no idea how far my 800 or so divine charges would get me. So unfortunately, 200 million experience did not happen, as by level 140 invention, which was a little over 149 million XP, I had pretty much ran out of divine charges entirely, which was pretty close to my goal, but nonetheless something that I'll have to wait for a later date. And even after getting 140 invention, I still had some time where I was still farming Ratsee, so even after running out of divine charges, I simply trained defense and strength, as I felt like getting those 120s, including constitution, just for fun. And it was only a matter of time, and I managed to get there, where I was able to successfully get all three of those skills to 120 simultaneously, which was pretty cool. One day they may actually give some use if they do manage to bring in the perks for 120 capes, although for now it is just more 120 capes for the bank. And in the process I also managed to pick up the strength combat pet, which was the only one of those three skills I hadn't previously gotten, but now I am actually pretty close to having all of the combat skilling pets, only needing the prayer and summoning ones, which are skills I pretty much never get experience in. And the final thing I recently experienced and wanted to talk about was the Temple of Imaishi. So I did complete this elite dungeon on the day of release. Luckily, one of the two people I did go with had actually completed this instance before, so he pretty much led the group, and we didn't really have too many issues until the final boss. Now, I don't really have an opinion just yet, considering it's still being tweaked as I understand it. My only complaint is the fact that it's more or less designed to be group content. Now I know it is technically soloable and that people have, but those are people who are exceptionally good at the game on a level where I can't imagine myself doing it, and if it could hypothetically be any different, I wish the instance would scale down to either 3, 2, or 1 person depending on the group size. Now I understand making and coordinating a group of people takes a lot more effort than soloing, so I wouldn't even mind if the group size increased the chance of unique boss loot or something like that, just so it felt like there was more choice. But regardless, who knows, maybe it will end up being quite soloable once people refine strategies and understand the instance a lot better. But nevertheless, I don't want to come across as too negative, as I did really enjoy my time completing the Elite Dungeon. Now for those who haven't been there yet, the gist of it is there are multiple large floors full of minions. There are multiple different minions with various mechanics, which you have to deal with differently, but overall they are nothing crazy. Then there were the bosses. So the first one we have is a giant lobster, somewhat similar to the one seen in the Sizzling Summer event, called the Sanctum Guardian. So this boss basically had two mechanics. The first mechanic gave one player a debuff. This debuff after a few seconds would create a pool, which would deal damage every second to anyone that stood within the pool. So to deal with this, we simply had the player with the debuff run north away from where we were stacked, so it wasn't an issue throughout the fight. And the second mechanic, the boss would begin shooting water in a counterclockwise rotation. Your group simply had to move to the opposite side where the water had already been, so it had no chance of hitting anyone, and apart from that, there really wasn't much else to the lobster boss. Next we had the sword guy, known as Masudu the Ascended. So it was pretty straightforward as well, with 3 mechanics. First mechanic, he would target one player and begin spinning and slowly following them. All this targeted player had to do was run away. Now, one thing of note is the lobster boss just repeated the 2 mechanics that he did over and over. Now, this boss actually did his mechanics based off of his health, and as he got lower health, he transitioned to a different mechanic. So at around 50% health, he moved on to his next mechanic, where he began spawning these water minions, which didn't move and just did damage to the whole group. This was really easy to deal with, as you just had to kill these water minions as they were spawning. And after doing that for quite some time, he transitioned to his final mechanic, where he would spam range damage into the whole party, and occasionally leaping into the air, and upon landing he would inflict heavy magic damage onto everyone, or at least it seemed like everyone. So this just required you to always be protecting the appropriate prayer, and really being sure to put on magic protect when he leaped into the air. Also adding devotion onto this helped save a lot of food. But other than that, another relatively simple boss. And then the final boss, we have the mutilated dragon wall boss thing, known as Sieru the Azuri Serpent. So essentially this boss you just had to avoid everything, as it would hit very hard and kill you in a few damage ticks, and eventually he would transition by putting his head onto the platform after taking a certain amount of damage, where 2 people could climb up and destroy the crystals on his back, whilst one person, in this instance me, killed oozes, which would heal the crystals if they actually managed to reach the boss, although it was very easy to stop these oozes from doing that. Now, killing this boss took us over an hour, as eventually one of us would die to something. Now, I could imagine this boss being very easy to kill in the future once people had a lot of experience at dodging these mechanics, considering the fight itself actually wasn't that long, and there really aren't that many different mechanics. The mechanics themselves were just very punishing and repeated themselves over and over. In terms of the loot, I didn't get anything from any of the previous bosses, as the loot at the time was currently bugged, so only the highest DPS got loot, and as I hope you're all aware, I am not a master of the combat system, apart from the last boss who wasn't buggy, and from that boss I got 28 Onyx Dust. But all in all, it did appear to be a really good update to the game, and I am really looking forward to doing this instance more, and also any of the new elite dungeons they add in the future. So that is pretty much it for me. Apologies as usual for the lengthy time between videos. I had really hoped to get this out sooner, but that spider just wouldn't let that happen, and the dream does live on that I will one day have a more consistent upload schedule. But that is it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.